There's a certain feeling that settles in when you're working and the rest of the world is just asleep. The world gets quiet, the shadows stretch out, and all the normal rules of the day seem to just melt away. For night shift workers, that's their reality. Today, we're diving into that world, a place where isolation can turn into pure terror in the blink of an eye. Less than 10 customers. That right there, that's the foundation for everything we're about to get into. Just try to imagine it. You're completely alone for hours and hours in some huge, empty building. And that quiet, it's not the peaceful kind. Nope. It's the kind of silence that makes every little creak, every buzz of the lights sound 10 times louder. It's a quiet that just makes you feel incredibly vulnerable. See, working the night shift isn't just about being awake at weird hours. It's really like you've stepped into a whole other world. Those places that feel so normal and familiar during the day, a convenience store, a gas station, at night they completely transform. Those big glass doors that feel so welcoming in the sunlight, at night they suddenly feel like this super thin, fragile barrier between you and whatever is lurking out there in the darkness. And that's the big question, isn't it? What does happen when that quiet is finally broken? Because when you're that isolated, any interruption feels like a massive event. And sometimes the person who steps out of that darkness, well, they're not just a customer. They're bringing a kind of dread with them that, honestly, you could never prepare for. So let's start with the first type of fear. This is the slow burn, the kind that doesn't just jump out and scream. It's the quiet, unnerving presence that creeps in. It's the unique terror that comes from being watched by someone when you have absolutely no idea what they want. And our first story begins in the perfect setting for this kind of dread. We've got a lone worker at a remote gas station pulling the graveyard shift from midnight to 6 a.m. The highway outside is dead silent. His only company is the low hum of the refrigerators and that endless, pitch-black nothingness outside the windows. So a truck pulls in. Seems normal enough. A man gets out, but he doesn't pump gas. He doesn't move. He just stands there, this 6-foot-tall silhouette, just staring at the pump. The worker inside thinks, okay, maybe he needs help. But then the man slowly turns his head, and he's staring right at him, directly at him. And this is where the terror just spikes. The worker looks away for just a second, 1 second, and when he looks back, the man has closed half the distance to the store. He didn't walk, he's just nearer. Still standing there, still staring, his face just a void in the darkness. The worker, completely freaked out, lunges for the door and locks it. He hides behind the counter for 5 long minutes, just praying the guy will leave. He finally works up the courage to peek out again, and that's when it hits him, pure panic. He lets out a full scream because the man is now right outside the door. Pressed against the glass, his face just inches away. A silent, menacing figure there in the night. And then, the silence is shattered. It's not a polite knock for attention. It's the sound of a body hitting the door, these heavy, violent thuds. He's not trying to get in anymore. He's trying to break in. The only thing protecting the worker is a thin pane of glass and a single lock. So, that's one kind of terror. The silent menace, the creeping dread. But what about the opposite? What happens when the threat is loud, erratic, and totally impossible to understand? Well, that brings us to our next story, this time at a 7-Eleven. A man in his mid-20s walks in, but he's not there to shop. He's just yelling, making these loud, strange noises. Now the worker, he has a brother with a mental disability, so his first thought is actually sympathy. He tries to talk to the guy, but all he gets back are these bizarre yelling sounds while the man's eyes are just fixed on the ceiling. It's deeply uncomfortable, but it seems more tragic than threatening, at first. The man eventually leaves, and the worker is just left feeling unsettled. But an hour later, the store's phone rings. He picks it up, and on the other end is that same familiar yelling. And that's the moment everything changes. This is no longer a random tragic encounter. It's targeted. The man knows where he works, and suddenly the fear becomes deeply personal. Okay, so now we shift gears. We've moved from that psychological pressure to direct physical danger. This is what happens when the flimsy barrier of a locked door or a phone line is gone, and the threat is right there in front of you, with absolutely nowhere to run. So imagine this. You're 22 years old, working alone in a massive 24-hour store. A man in his 30s corners you and starts firing off these increasingly personal questions.
your name, your age, if you have a girlfriend, or a boyfriend, he adds, while putting his hand on your shoulder. The violation of personal space is immediate and terrifying. The worker just backs away and retreats to the back room, hoping the man will just leave.
He waits for about 20 minutes, assumes the guy is gone, and then heads to the employee bathroom, a space that should be a total sanctuary. He sits down in a stall, and then he hears the main bathroom door open. He freezes. Then he looks up at the crack in the stall door, and he sees an eye staring right at him. He realizes he's been hunted down and trapped. In a moment of just pure terror, instinct kicks in. He knows he has one shot. He pulls a box cutter from his pocket, slides the blade through the crack to force the eye away. Then he slams the door open right into the man's face and just runs. He doesn't stop, doesn't look back, just bolts out of the store, heart pounding, fumbling for his phone to call his boss. And this kind of threat isn't just for civilians. Take this story from a canine officer on his own graveyard shift. He spots a white van parked deep inside a crop field, doors wide open. No one's around. He and his canine partner, a German shepherd named Sammy, move in to investigate. Sammy goes absolutely crazy near the back of the van. The officer opens the trunk and is hit by a smell so foul it almost makes him pass out. And then he sees it. 7 full body bags, and each one has a pair of feet sticking out. He has stumbled into something monstrous. He immediately calls for backup, but before it can arrive, he hears a twig snap. Sammy takes off into the crops. The officer follows, and suddenly he's surrounded by movement in the darkness. 2 arms wrap around his throat from behind. He can't breathe, he can't fight. Just as he's about to die, he hears Sammy's bark, followed by a scream. The dog bit down on his attacker's leg and saved his life. You see, escaping the immediate danger is one thing, but these encounters don't just end when the sun comes up. They leave scars. The fear follows you home. It embeds itself in your sense of safety, and it changes how you see the world forever. Remember the 7-Eleven worker who was getting those creepy phone calls? For weeks, he felt watched in his own home. One day, he goes into his basement for the first time in a while. In a closet, he finds writing on the wall: 7-Eleven, the store's address, and his own home address. He finds kitchen knives. The yelling man hadn't just been calling him. He had been living in his house. So what are the common threads of terror here? It all starts with that profound isolation, which basically makes you a target. Then comes the violation of spaces that are supposed to be safe: your workplace, your bathroom, your own home. It's the sheer unpredictability of it all that's so terrifying, and it leaves behind this lasting trauma that just rewires your brain. And that trauma can manifest in really unexpected ways. This quote is from the canine officer. After his dog saved him, he shot his attacker and he ran. He and Sammy survived, but the other killers in the van got away. And he says he fled like a coward. And even though he saved his and his dog's life, that feeling of failure, of cowardice, is what haunts him. Which leaves us with this one final, chilling thought. For those who experience the true horror of the night shift, the daylight doesn't erase what happened in the dark. The fear becomes a part of you. So the real question isn't just how you survive the night, it's how you live with its memory and how you stop seeing the shadows long after the sun